Welcome to Austin Tech Connect, the official podcast of the Austin Technology Council. Presented to you by Netspend. Homegrown in Austin, Netspend has been a leading provider of consumer and business payment solutions for almost 25 years. From prepaid cards to mobile bank accounts to money movement services, Netspend connects people, brands, and payment products to deliver innovative financial solutions.
Hey, everybody, and welcome to Austin Tech Connect, the podcast about the future of Austin's technology community. My name is Tom Singer, and I am with the Austin Technology Council. ATC is a 31-year-old organization that was founded to help bring the tech community together. And right now, we're in a rebirth. We're retooling the whole organization, and we're trying to get the grassroots members of the Austin tech community to come back to ATC because we can't be a grassroots organization without you. So we hope that you will check out what we're trying to do now and into the future. Every week on this podcast, we interview really cool business leaders who are doing great things to hear their story of success and to get their advice on how you can thrive and what they think the future of Austin is all about. And today, I am happy to introduce all of you to my friend, Zach Wright. So Zach is the co-founder of Syft, and I'll get him to tell us all about that company, and we'll chat and learn about what he's doing now. So Zach, welcome to the show.
Tom, thanks so much for having me. This is great.
So for those of you who don't know Zach Wright, and you really should know Zach, he co-founded an AI startup that is focused on value selling. And what they do is they help to accelerate the connection between buyers and sellers all around value. And if you're trying to sell something, you know that that matters. Currently, his company is partnering with all types of companies in their space. They're moving forward. And on top of that, he's a brand new dad. So Zach, let's start right there. 7 weeks ago, you had a little baby boy. How's Charlie doing? And how is it to have two startups at once?
Yeah,
You've got Syft and you got Charlie.
Yeah, I decided to start my own company and have a kid all in 1 year. So just doing all the things. But yeah, it's the timing is tough. Actually, this last night from 4 to 5:30, he just would not go back to sleep. So it was my turn to kind of do the old rocking up and down, which I tell all my friends my shoulders are going to be stronger than they've ever been by the time he's one. So pretty interesting stuff.
Just to make you feel horrible, my youngest daughter, I have two daughters, my youngest daughter never once slept through the night until she was about 2.5 years old. There was always a time, whether it was a few minutes or a few hours, where she needed attention in the middle of the night. So hopefully, my first daughter, of course, slept through the night when she was 3 weeks old and never, ever had a problem with that. So we said, let's have another one. And the second one, that's the reason we only have two, is she would never, ever, ever let us sleep more than 4 or 5 hours at a time. So hopefully Charlie will do better than that. The upside of that, Kate turned out just fine. She's a senior at Dartmouth. So, she staying up at night, we would talk about the world while she was 6 months old. And I think that's why she got into the Ivy League.
Yeah, that's amazing. Yeah. So if you see me pumping caffeine, it's because I'm on like 4 hours of sleep, but that's neither here nor there.
Nice. Well, let's talk a little bit about your business career. You went to school down in San Antonio. I think it was Trinity University, if my memory reminds me correctly.
I played football there. We had a great time.
Nice. So what happened after Trinity? What was the early days of Zach's career?
Yeah. So going into my senior year, in between junior and senior year, I had an internship at Oracle here in Austin. So I found someone and I was renting a room out of someone's apartment for like $400 a month. You can imagine that was not the nicest apartment, but neither here nor there. It was me and 12 other interns. And at the end, I got offered a full-time role after graduation. So it would be a whole year later, which made my senior year very relaxed because I had the job landed. I think my second semester senior year, I had 12 credit hours, which if you're familiar, that's virtually nothing. And I got a puppy, which was probably not the smartest move, but landed a job at Oracle, which was incredible. I did really well in that first year and did a great job. The table stakes of hitting your pipeline goals as a intro seller or like a SDR, sales development rep, they probably call it. That's table stakes, but I was really good at networking and finding mentors. And lo and behold, you have 5 mentors that are all hiring managers. All 5 of them want you on their team. So I got to have the pick of the litter of which team I joined. And then that first year went it was like 500% of my number, which was crazy at that time. And I spent 3.5 years at Oracle. Then I moved over to the field as a field seller. So selling it face to face versus over the phone. I went to Informatica and did field selling, but I was covering cities all over the nation. So my first year, I think I had 100 flight segments going out to Cincinnati and Indianapolis.
Hey, those frequent flyer miles, though, those are a nice little perk.
Yeah. So I was the 1K on United and all that kind of stuff, which now I look back on and I'm like, wow, that's kind of sad that was what I was like really excited about. I'd way rather have a life. But I boomeranged back to Oracle as a regional sales director for a year, and we had a great time. And it was really hard. It's easy to leave a tough gig, but this was a great gig, and our team was killing it. But I had bigger and broader plans for Syft, the company that I co-founded with my 2 best friends. Nice.
So let's talk about Syft. How did the idea come up, and what are you guys doing now?
Yeah, so my CEO and co-founder, he has a sales background as well. He worked at Oracle and Workday. And then we have a third co-founder, Peter Katzos. He's much more technical, but he was kind of the technical mind that we brought the idea to. And he's like, yeah, I can make that happen. That's actually something that I'm already doing. But Lee and I, we had seen the gaps in the manual processes a B2B seller has to go through. So typically you get a territory that you're responsible for. It might be a vertical, it might be a geography, but it's typically a set of 50 to 500 to maybe 1,000 prospective accounts. And you essentially get a territory, and then you have all of these applications that give you silos of data. So then you have to kind of put it all together. Then you have to do manual processes and people are keeping track of their accounts in Excel spreadsheets, and they're prioritizing based off of gut feeling, and there's not much science that goes into it. And then they're like, all right, here's a sales engagement tool where you can spray your message to thousands of people. Well, that sounds great, but it's not very effective because you don't sound personalized. You're not getting the attention of your buyers. So we knew there's got to be a better way to identify which are the right accounts and give me a single application to give me the contacts and help me create valuable messaging so that I can be personalized to the challenges that these prospects are facing, and how our customer solution is uniquely positioned to solve those challenges. So a lot of people, they're using generative AI, and I feel like that's table stakes, but it's really the value of the content that's created that you have to judge it by. So we're really doing that in a unique way that's very different than these other generative AI sales tools out there.
So what makes it different?
Yeah. So a lot of sales tools, they don't have that. We're scraping for all of the research at the company. So we understand the companies and the activity going on. And we can say, all right, what challenges are these companies facing? And instead of just bringing up a form, which a lot of these other tools are doing, and is like, hey, what's the pain point of this prospect? What's your value prop? What's the title of the person? Those other tools are just taking that to ChatGPT and it spits out a robotic answer. We are instead identifying the challenges that these customers or prospects are facing, and then looking at our customers' marketing. So then we can apply the right verbiage that solves those challenges that we found, but it's in the tonality and the verbiage of the company and their marketing. It's not making stuff up or hallucinating, as the generative AI, I guess, term is being coined. It's not hallucinating. And then we take all of that and find the right contacts, and then we put it into email best practices. Emailing is one output, but we want to really follow all sorts of outputs on how salespeople are getting in touch with their buyers today and in the future. So we're trying to create this concept called value matching, right? So I want to match buyers and sellers based off of value, where it's you and the customer versus the problem, versus today it's very much buyer versus seller, right? So we're trying to create this collaborative effort. And my whole thing is I want our users that use Syft to approach their prospects and say, I have a perspective on what challenges I think you're facing. And I think I have a good understanding of why or how we can solve those problems. Here's a hypothesis. Let's spend our first call seeing what I got right and what I need to fix versus today, sellers, they'll go in and do discovery is like the first part of the conversation. And it's like a 20 question that prospect has been asked 100 times, right? So we're trying to really change the way the sales process is happening and like be in touch with what happens if cold emailing dies in a year. Where's prospecting going then, right? So
I actually think cold emailing died last year. So I think that we need to be looking for where is prospecting going.
Yeah, exactly. I've actually, it sounds crazy, but I've seen cold calling is on the pendulum swing back. And a lot of people are finding a lot of success from that, but there's more than just cold calling and emailing. There's creating content on social media. X, formerly Twitter, is a way that I'm getting in touch with customers, sending personalized Loom videos. There's all sorts of ways that you can prospect that's unique and different out there. But the whole goal is to personalize, spray and pray and shaking the tree and sending 10,000 emails and seeing what falls out. That's the past.
So it's interesting because, the sales tech space is very, very crowded. I mean, most companies that I've talked to have anywhere from 10 to 20, different technologies in their sales stack, in their tech stack for sales. And so, as you started the company, how did you stand out? How did you get your first clients?
Yeah. Well, the first clients are typically from your network. But let's say like first competitive clients, that's much more interesting, right? Because it wasn't because it was Uncle Johnny or whoever, But yeah, like you hit the nail on the head. There's 10 to 20 applications that a seller might use. So what we're doing is consolidating a lot of those functionalities by bringing in and white labeling data sources. So like an example is someone might think that they, as startup, has to spend $50,000 just to have a contact repository. It's like, all right, well, we partnered with a contact provider and we give that to you, right? So you get that with Syft. Then maybe they're doing firmographics about company data. Well, we give that to you, right? Or they want to create valuable emails driven by generative AI. Well, that's a part of Syft, right? So we're trying to create this horizontal experience on everything on the territory planning and value selling aspects, and just hyper focused on value. And if it's not important, we're not serving it up, kind of thing.
So what size clients do you focus on? I mean, obviously, a startup would love to have the giant enterprise, clients, but those are probably hard to come by when you're brand new. And then there's a lot of, solopreneurs out there who need this. I mean, do you work as small as a one-person team or what is the goal of the company as far as who's your profile?
Yeah, so we made the mistake of starting with enterprise because that was our background. It started.
You should have called me. I would have told you that's not going to work.
Yeah. Well, we started with enterprise. We did land some customers, but it was like monthly credit card swipes, and you can't build a business on monthly credit card swipes. And then in February, the great layoffs happened, and 40% of our user base lost their job.
Oh,
so therefore, 40% of our user base churned. Luckily, those people had a great experience with Syft and will take us elsewhere and have. But it was in February that we're like, hey, we got to pivot down market. We got to do annual commitment deals. We even have a customer that did a 3-year commitment, which was huge for a startup. That is like pretty much unheard of,
right?
To earn the trust of a company to give you a 3-year commit.
Well, but of course, how to sell with value, so that should be easy for you guys.
Absolutely. So yeah, that was a scenario, but we did pivot down market to more SMB. We have a couple customers that are a single, like a solopreneur or a single seller. It's a one-man show. And then we've got customers with 30 sellers, or our largest customer is at that enterprise account, but it's just growing by word of mouth by 10% because the QBR at those big accounts are our Super Bowl. Someone's like, hey, I found all these deals in Syft. And they're like, oh, I haven't heard about Syft. And then next thing you know, after the QBR, we've got like 15 inbound leads, right? So it has been all over the place, but our outbounding efforts is more towards SMB and mid-market SaaS and SaaS services.
Nice. So that's interesting. You said in February, you watched about a 40% churn. And yet, I think you told me that in September, you hit some pretty big milestones of doubling. So it's not been a bad year.
Yeah, not been a bad year. And we're still very young in our journey, but for any company to have like a 90% growth in 1 month, that is almost unheard of.
Sure.
It just so happened to be timed with my paternity leave. So I spent my first weeks with my kid just while he's asleep. Obviously, I'm not a monster. But while he's asleep, I implemented 6 new enterprise customers. And that took up a majority of that paternity leave, but hey. Great problems to have as a co-founder of a company.
Yep.
And we're just really excited to try to ride some of this momentum and really hit our revenue goals that we've been looking for prior to launching a real seed round and raising some money.
And you're adding to your staff, so that's good. You're growing as well, correct?
Yeah. We just got the verbal from we have like a hit list of the top people that we want, and we just our CTO just got the verbal and signature of someone to come aboard. That's I guess they call it like the FANG companies. It's like Facebook and Amazon, like all those really high quality developers. We just landed one of those. So nice. We're really excited. Nice. And they know each other. They have past experience working together. So awesome. Really excited to kind of beef up the muscle of the development team.
So what's the future of Syft? What do you see coming down the path in the next couple of years?
Yeah. So I see a lot happening, right? I'm trying to figure out where to start really. Prospecting is generally going to change. If you think of everybody in this space is consolidating. You've seen acquisitions left and right. So everybody is like Gong was just doing call recording, but now they're doing sales engagement. And Outreach was just doing sales engagement, and now they do call recording with their product Kaya. And like all of these companies are kind of all growing into the same space. And what we're trying to do is just really stand out from creating value and creating partnerships with the right ones here. But yeah, from a prospecting perspective, a lot of people are starting to realize that you've got to be personalized, and that generative AI on its own is neat, but how do you scale it? So we're going to keep trying to grow and do the best that we can to kind of ride this wave and see how good these partnerships work out. So we're about to announce 2 really big partnerships with 2 of those players later this month. So I won't spill the secret, but some really cool conversations with their executives on potentially creating some joint offerings for the SMB, because there's another player out there that's kind of eating their lunch in the SMB market. So how can they work with Syft, who's doing really well in that space? So that's really exciting.
Nice. Well, and you and your co-founders, you guys are young. You're kind of the next generation of these hot companies to watch in Austin. So let's switch gears a little bit. I mean, obviously, you came here after college. You grew up in the Houston area. You went to college in San Antonio. Of course, anyone in those places wants to move to Austin.
Absolutely.
You've been here about 10 years ago. How long ago did you leave Oracle and start this business?
So I left last July of 2022, and it's been incredible. Everybody thinks, why not me? It is a big freaking challenge to start a company. Like, you take a lot of things for granted, like HR even, or marketing, or payroll, or benefits, like all this stuff you take for granted. But man, every win, like we framed our first dollar and framed our first ordering document that was signed. And like, I'm looking at the first dollar framed right there. But it's so special because every single win feels like you're stacking up your valuation, because you are. And those early days, these are worth exponentially more than the value that you close. So it does feel great. You just have the mentality that you have to have as an entrepreneur is very even keel, because you might be super high one day and you're super low the next day. So you really cannot overdo the highs and you can't, like, you got to just ride out the lows. Cause it is, I've had days that are like, you feel bipolar almost. You're like, oh my gosh, this is crazy. I felt so good yesterday and now I feel so crappy. But yeah, like it's just being consistent. And I feel like one thing that has helped me is generating content has been a very valuable part of our presence, because we don't have a marketing team. You're looking at it from a marketing perspective. So like as a early stage startup, the co-founders, I do prospecting, I do marketing, I do customer onboarding, and I'll do customer training, right? Like I'm doing everything that's customer facing. And we got to hire our first sales rep about 6 months ago, which was very exciting. And we just opened a job rec for our first customer success manager. So nice. It's really cool to see that progression and like really paying off, that the grit and the work is paying off, and investors are starting to notice as well. So that's they all have these like benchmarks in their head of ARR that you have to get to, and signs of product market fit with daily active users and all that. And it's all coming together. It's really exciting.
Nice. So as sort of this, young hotshot entrepreneur here in Austin, the last year and a half trying to grow this, what do you love about starting a business in Austin in 2022, 2023?
Well, generative AI has really opened up the doors wide open. Like I think of companies that are so massive, previously no one would ever want to take them on, right? But generative AI now allows one person to take the role of 20 people, right? Which sounds crazy, right? But like I look at a company like Google and they're like the de facto search engine. And then I look at a company like Perplexity, and I have nothing to do with Perplexity other than I'm a customer. But they're essentially, instead of searching for something on Google and then they give you the websites to go find it, they instead give you the answer and then give you the sources of where they found it. Mm-hmm. And they weave in generative AI into it so you can ask it questions and iterate and do all of these things. But I'm like, holy crap, if you told me that a startup could displace Google and deliver a better product than Google and they're 6 months old, I would have told you you're a psychopath, right? So it's just very cool I'm seeing that all over the place. And I think if these large companies don't adopt AI in the right way and in an agile way, because it's very difficult for them to turn this cruise ship, you're going to see displacements everywhere and better mousetraps everywhere. So it's just really, I think when you think of mobile was introduced and cloud was introduced, generative AI will massively overshadow all of this. And you're going to see in the next 5 years, you won't recognize life without generative AI. Oh, yeah. And it's going to be pretty weird.
I think next 2 years. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
So again, doing all this here in Austin, how do you find the climate? There's people who say, hey, we're not as close knit of a tech community as we used to be. There's people who say it's harder to reach the investors than it used to be. What are you finding as far as where is Austin as far as being a place to be a startup?
I think it's an incredible place to be for a startup. One thing I love that is not the same everywhere else is, like, even when I met you, Tom, the very first thing that we did when we had coffee is you're like, hey, I've got this investor that I think you should talk to, or go talk to this guy I'm mentoring, Chris Bussing, and get on his podcast and collaborate with him somehow, or go talk with this guy or go talk with that guy. You introduced me to like 4 or 5 people, and then I took action and I turned those into 4 or 5 people. And I created a little network here in Austin, and it has been, I just wanted to say thank you for that, number one. But number two, like, don't be afraid to ask for someone's help or ask for a referral, or like when I asked you to go get coffee, it was a yes immediately, and you're the CEO of ATC. So it's like, nobody's off limits, just go be bold. And I think that's cool that people are open to meeting like that.
So it's interesting, the sort of godfather of our business and tech community is a gentleman, Dr. George Kosmetsky. He passed away almost 20 years ago, but he was the dean of the business school for 17 years before it was McCombs, when it was just the UT Business School, from 1966 for like the next 16 years. And he started to realize that we had a university town, we had a government town, but there wasn't much else. And he sort of rallied the troops of everybody who cared about growth and economic development, from the university, the Chamber of Commerce, to the tech companies that were already here. And he said, where are our grandchildren going to work if we don't grow something special? And I would imagine, I mean, I've met him several times, but I didn't know him. I would imagine he never predicted the Austin of today. Could have happened in, 30 years as it did. However, there was something said about him. I'm reading his biography, and it said that as busy as he was, and, back in the 70s, Jimmy Carter had him on an economic thing. He was traveling the country. He was very involved with academic institutions all over the country and economic development planning in the 90s. And it said no matter how busy he was, if you needed him, he was there. And I thought that is just, I think for anybody, that is what you want on your tombstone when it comes to that. So when you say, hey, I said yes, I try to say yes to everybody. Not everybody time do I meet someone who's doing something as great as what you're doing. But, we have to look for our tech leadership in Austin to find more reasons to say yes and less reasons to put up walls and just hang out with people just like them.
Yeah. Yeah, I totally agree. And like being open to just helping people and mentoring people. I feel like passing that on is definitely a very important thing that I look forward to doing, and have done for junior sellers. And I wouldn't call it a podcast, but I created a YouTube channel where I'm doing live interviews, and I'm bringing on the best salespeople that I know, with the hopes that my audience are junior sellers that want to learn from these vision. I'm calling it the vision selling interviews, because the purpose of a vision is not so that you achieve it. It's who it makes you today is what I learned. So a lot of people, they want to figure, they're like, oh, I don't have a vision. It's like, okay, well, you should make your vision to find your vision, like that sort of thing. So I think that's great.
So what do you think is the future of tech in Austin? Where do you think we're going to be in the next decade?
Yeah, that's a broader conversation for sure. But yeah, I've joined so many of these groups. Like there's a little group that someone reached out to me and he's like, hey, I'm just finding other CEOs and co-founders our age to go out there and meet monthly. So I'm doing that with some folks. I feel like community is definitely something that's popping up everywhere. I even have someone that I think I introduced you to recently, and he's creating a group here in town of sales leaders and focusing on the inner game as much as the craft of sales. So you're seeing these little communities pop up everywhere, and it's just great to see the collaboration and everybody's lifting each other up. And you're seeing a stronger emphasis on mental health and how important it is to have your mind right, kind of thing. Because if you burn out and you have the best idea in the world, you're never going to put it into practice, right? Ideas are cheap, but it's execution that's real.
Well, just on a side note, that's one of the things I admire a lot about your generation is you guys talk about that. When I was growing up, if you were struggling, it was like, suck it up, buttercup, and nobody wanted to hear it. And my friends who were, in their 20s and 30s, they'll be like, yeah, I went to my therapist today. I'm having it's just part of the vernacular, which I think is, having been through some stuff myself recently, I think it's a healthy thing that we're talking about that. So also you talk about community and things like that, you're quick to say yes and attend things and show up. And I don't think everybody is. I don't think everybody is like, sure, I'll go to that. You'll be at the Austin Technology Council CEO/C-Suite Summit next week. Not a lot of young startups with, 5, 6, 10 employees are like, yeah, I need to be there. But you were like, absolutely, I'll come. And I think that's a good thing too, because I think if we're going to continue to grow as a tech community, we have to have everybody involved, right? Everybody has to be in the game, whether they're, 25, 35, 75, everybody's got to have their voice heard. So I admire you and some of your peers who the answer is, yes, I'll play.
Yeah. I feel like it's the Jim Carrey yes man approach. That's what I've tried to take for sure. Like I got invited to the coolest event ever tomorrow. The CEO of Betts Recruiting, she invited 20 C-levels in Austin to do a poker game, and she's paying for the buy-ins for everybody. So nice. I was like, man, that's cool. That's a cool event. Yep. I think these events are getting better and better. So it's like, why wouldn't you go and meet people and hopefully create a real relationship? And if you just don't show up and sell people, rather like try to make a true relationship, people are going to naturally find a fit within their own organization or know somebody where that might be a fit. So I think that's a real big difference in business today. Like even like part of some of the sales techniques people are doing is like, oh, join communities of Slack channels and all this different stuff. Like you don't just go in there and pitch yourself, right? You go there.
Well, there's a lot of people on LinkedIn who I get these in-mails, who are talking about, they don't even do the research on who you are. It's just like, my title says CEO and tech in it, and they start thinking that I'm running Syft, or Oracle. Yeah. And it's like, not quite.
Yeah. So, I mean, having authentic relationships, I feel like that's where it's going versus just cold pitch numbers game. Mm-hmm. I would say it's the opposite. It's quality over quantity, no doubt.
So to end this interview, I ask everybody kind of the same question. And that is, I personally believe that community, collaboration, and conversations can solve all problems. Which of those three words resonates with you the most and why?
Yeah. And I already talked about community, so maybe I'll talk about conversation.
Cool.
So I had a run of conversations, and I talked about this earlier with you, and you referred me to these people. I love the one-on-one setting, just picking someone's brain on, I feel most comfortable in a one-on-one setting. And maybe that's why I'm loving these podcasts, even though there's probably hundreds, if not thousands of people listening at some point. I love the one-on-one conversation. So taking those and unwinding that thread a little bit and finding where it goes, you'll meet some really interesting people. And I think that's how you really change the Austin tech scene. And like when you met me, it was inspiring that the CEO of ATC would go meet with a co-founder of a company. It's like that one-on-one conversation is how you make a difference, right? So I think being bold and asking for those conversations is definitely how you make a name for yourself and get noticed.
Yep. Well, I think you're definitely doing that. So the final question, if somebody came to visit you in Austin who'd never been here before, maybe it's an old friend from college or your cousin or your aunt, they've never been to Austin, where's the one place you would take them? Whether it's a restaurant or an attraction or part of nature, where would you take somebody in Austin?
Yeah, I love, there's this restaurant, and I pretty much have taken, this actually got one of my friends to move here, which is like claim to fame, right? They should like post this quote on their wall, but El Chapulín on South Congress, authentic Mexican or Oaxacan, I guess, restaurant. And they also have a mezcal. They're known for their mezcal bar, but I've taken so many people from out of town there, and they're like, this is the best Mexican food I've ever had.
Nice. What's it called again? I don't think I know this place.
El Chapulín on South Congress. Same owner as Enoteca. They replaced it because they had two competing Italian restaurants next to each other, and it was the same owner. They were like, why are we doing this to ourselves? So they ended up replacing it with a Oaxacan restaurant, and it's incredible.
Awesome. Well, I'm going to have to go check it out. Hey, Zach Wright, thanks for being here on Austin Tech Connect. Any final words?
Yeah, well, if you want to follow me at Zach Wright Syft on LinkedIn or X, formerly Twitter, or YouTube, or even on Peloton, I've got all of the names are the same for all of those venues. So please follow me and subscribe if you're interested in hearing more about it.
Nice.
Or reach out to me. I'm happy to have a conversation as well.
Nice. Well, thank you again for being here. And thank you to everybody who tuned in and listened. You know what? If it wasn't for the audience supporting this show and listening to this show and giving us feedback, why would I do this? I do it because I want to make sure that you're getting the connections to people in Austin. That's why we call it Austin Tech Connect, so that you know the ones to watch, whether it's an established company or whether it's someone who is the one you're going to know about in a few years, like Syft. You should be paying attention to everybody who we interview. So thank you for being here. And is your company a member of the Austin Technology Council? We would welcome your involvement as we look to the future. We would like you to add your voice to our tech community and the things that we're trying to do well into the next decade. Join and support the Austin Technology Council today.
Thanks for listening to the Austin Tech Connect podcast. Make sure your company is a member of the Austin Technology Council and add your voice to the future of our tech ecosystem in Central Texas.